Hey everyone, welcome to the Iowa Gravel Series Podium Podcast. My name is Chris McQueen, and we have a very fun show here for you today. We have the most winning person that we've had on the Gravel Series yet, Jake Johnson, and we're super excited to have him here. Jake is one of the few and proud that signed up for every race in the Iowa Gravel Series in 2022 and has just been a phenomenal athlete. And so we're really excited to learn a little bit about him, his background, specifically like how the heck he trains and gets to this level of performance. We're really interested about that, and maybe a little bit about his goals for 2023. But Jake, thank you so much for being here and for giving us a little bit of your time.
Happy to do it, Chris, and thanks for doing what you do.
Appreciate it. So I'm going to start with kind of just a quick overview because I realized that like we've been hanging out for like the last 5 months together, or at least once a month. But like beyond the fact that I know you've got a wife and a couple adorable children, and then you've got an Iron Man tattoo on your calf, I realized that like I don't know if I really know who Jake is and like how he ticks, besides the fact that he's just super fast and a super nice guy. So I'm just gonna ask you first off, like, how did you find the Iowa Gravel Series, and what made you decide to sign up for 5 races, just out for me at least, seemingly nowhere?
Yeah, it's funny. It's kind of, you're sitting there in the wintertime and what are we going to do? And you have all this energy and you haven't suffered enough, apparently. So, found you and saw the races and went through the pictures. Chris, it all kind of comes back to last year after Ironman Wisconsin. I had a cross bike and I went out and gave it a try. And I think I made it maybe a mile up the road on the gravel. And I turned around and went back home. Like, I don't know why anyone does this. However, that was because I was, probably 60 psi on 32s. Like, I had no idea. And so, of course, I was getting hammered around and, almost crashing. So, yeah. And so I went out and they did a turkey burner out in Eastern Iowa. And I did that. Geez, this could be really fun if a guy could get used to it and do it right how these other guys are doing. And so I sort of did one closer to home and at half the PSI, and that was much better. I said, I think this is a thing. And then, just sort of honestly, Ironman Des Moines happened the full distance first time this year, and I was signed up for that. So I paid my ridiculous money to go and do that. And then, January came, and like, look, I just don't want to run anymore. Like, there were too many marathons. Sort of check that box. And you mentioned my two little kids and my wife. My kids are 5 and 8. So I mean, at some level, I think going up, and this is no humble brag, whatever. This is being open with you. At some level, I was 22, 23 hours a week from January until September last year. And when I wasn't doing that training, I was sleeping or eating. It's sort of not fair.
Hmm.
So I like that I can get an equivalent amount of suffering and not be in the pool at 5:30 a.m. when it opens to beat the high school kids, in February. So, yeah, that's sort of the roundabout answer. And I found you and said, look, this is a distance that seems reasonable that I think I could do and not die. And that sort of worked out. So, yeah, that's how I got here.
Okay, all right. So that gives me some hints here. So that gives me some hints to go off of, and I appreciate that. So let's maybe back up just a little bit to get some history then. So you come from an Ironman background. How many Ironmans have you done so far?
So I've done three. So I did Coeur d'Alene. That's why my tattoo is green. Then I've done Madison twice.
Okay.
And Madison is really cool because they do it the Sunday after the Badgers usually play their first game. More importantly, it's the 9/11 weekend. So
Mm.
the first year I did it was the 15-year anniversary of 9/11. And so that was kind of like saying, geez, you get done with the Ironman, I'm never doing this again. And I was like, well, that's kind of a cool thing. And the city did it right. It was fantastic. It gives me goosebumps even to talk about it. So it was really well done. And so yeah, that's how that came to be.
Okay, so 3 Ironmans. Well, how did you get into Ironmans? Were you like let's go back to maybe even like college, high school time, a little bit in your athletic career, like were you always athletic, or did you get into this kind of later ish in life? Like, because there's usually some sort of path that gets people into like, I think I want to do Ironmans, but I think everybody's path's a little bit different.
No, man. I mean, I'll use air quotes. My athletic background is just sort of like Plinko, right? On Price is Right. I played baseball all growing up since I, 7 years old. Traveled to AAU. I could go to a small school for college and play baseball, or go play club at Iowa State, and all my friends were at Iowa State. So that's where I went for undergrad and played club up there. That was fun. I really had zero endurance background. I had some roller hockey I played. I thought that was a lot of fun. I still do. Uh, but it was kind of like the bank I worked at just out of college, undergrad. It was, hey, do a marathon relay. And
Mm.
yeah, I do. And so I did the first leg, and it was Des Moines Marathon, and I felt good enough, and I was dumb enough to say, "Hey, look, I'm going to jump in on the last leg too." And that was a poor decision. But then it was sort of like, maybe I could do a half by myself. I almost just did one, and then that progressed into a full. And a quick anecdote: the only reason I signed up for Coeur d'Alene is because I didn't know how to swim. I always avoided the water. I was terrified of the water. My wife swam at Valley, and she's a very good swimmer, and I just couldn't. So we would go to the lake, and it would be like life jacket on so tight I couldn't breathe. I just terrified. And said, you know what, that's enough. And I think I was, 27 maybe at the time. Like, no, we're just gonna pay our $1,000 for the Ironman, and we're gonna sign up for one that's a long way away. So I've got 10, 11, 12 months, whatever it was, to figure out how to swim 2.4 miles without stopping. So yeah, that was kind of it.
Wow.
Literally and metaphorically, immersion treatment. So
Well, and I mean, did I hear you right that you did the first leg of a relay marathon? Wouldn't that also be the swimming? Like, did you sign up for the swimming
no,
and then
no,
do the
of a
running?
marathon, not a triathlon,
Oh, of a
a marathon.
marathon. Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
so Des
okay.
Moines
Gotcha,
Marathon, they
gotcha,
did. You could do 5.5, 5.5 in the last 6.2. I'm like, I'll do the first one.
gotcha, gotcha.
Uh-huh.
So
So
you did a little bit of running. I'm kind of the same way. I've done a few triathlons, and I always felt very weak in that swimming area. I didn't sign up for a full Ironman though, and I'm like,
yeah,
well, let's do a half and only have to deal with a mile. But so
right.
kudos to you for that
Well, I already know
overachievement.
you're smarter than me, but that just proves it.
Jeez, man.
You get this sort of bravado going, like, oh, I can do that. Well, it was work.
So let me ask you this: just where did you come in with those Ironman efforts? I mean, were you feeling competitive in those three that you did, or were you kind of feeling in the middle of the pack? Where were you falling in as you came into this?
Yeah, so the first one I did, I don't know what and you're sort of testing my memory, under 12 hours. So I was pretty happy with that, all things considered. And then I went and did, what was it, 3 years later when I did Wisconsin the first time, call it 3 years, and I did 10:13. And so it was, and somebody could check it out, a few spots from Kona. And so it was kind of like, geez, I'm close enough. And this is why last year I went really, really hard.
Mhm.
I'm close enough, if I can even take 10 minutes off, I'm going to Hawaii. And I had a terrible race, and I went 20 minutes slower, and it just kind of broke me, honestly. You kind of get done, and all the stats lined up. I was feeling great, and I just had a terrible day, period. From the swim, it's like, okay, just make it to the bike, you'll be okay. Just make it to the run. You've done, a bunch of marathons, and it never came. It never came. So, like I said, and that was as soon as Des Moines opened up, like, all right, we're going to do that, and we're going to make this right. And then I just started running again and said, man, there's just too many miles in the legs running. I just don't want to do it anymore. And that was it. And so, the money, it was a charitable contribution. We'll say it that way. So
Yeah, gotcha. All right. Well, then that kind of makes sense. And that, I mean, those Ironmans, that was something that as I got into it, like you love the events, you love the camaraderie, the community there is fantastic. Really generally tend to be really high achieving professional people, but the amount of effort it takes to get there is huge. So it makes a lot of sense to me why like you're like, wait a minute, let's try this gravel thing a little bit. Um,
yeah. I mean, it's super isolating. That's the word I would use, though, right? I mean, because family wise, social wise, I mean, even if you have friends doing it, you're either not at the same pace or you have different schedules, whatever. And so it was kind of just, my friends would say, you're going to disappear for another year because that's kind of what it was.
Yeah.
There's no group rides.
Yeah, the Iron Man hermit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
basically,
Yeah.
basically.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So you get this cross bike, you have this cross bike, you go out, you have a really bumpy start, literally, and then you go out and you try few the turkey burner and everything. Um and so now equipment wise, I think you're on something a little bit better, aren't you? I can't remember if you're on a Cervelo or on a Specialized, but you seem to have a pretty specific gravel bike at this point, right?
Yep, I've got the crux and you figured out the tubeless scenario. Unfortunately, in your last race, got a cut that was not salvageable. But yeah, I mean, I went on a group ride this morning and took the crux. I think it's just fantastic. We can maybe come back to this later, but I actually broke the one you saw previously at Core Four in Iowa City. Hit a
Oh,
big piece of concrete. So anyhow, so yeah, but I mean, it just makes a gigantic difference, not just in the geometry, but be able to fit big wide tires in it too. So, just a terrific bike.
oh,
Like I said, if I broke it again, I would get another one.
oh yeah,
Not
yeah.
happily, but I would.
No, I can understand that. The what so what have I guess what have you noticed coming from this, the Ironman, the road biking, everything? What have you noticed as you've come into gravel? Because I know that you signed up for the series and you started with Silver City. You were very competitive there. I believe, if I remember right, you came in second at Silver City, right?
I think so.
And then um I think one of our conversations, you started kind of reaching out and signing up for these other races. But who have you been riding with? Have you been doing group rides continuously, or did that start once you started signing up for races? What happened first, the group rides or the sign up for a race and then find the group rides?
Yeah, I really didn't even start riding with any kind of group until, geez, maybe the beginning of August, middle of August. So there's a group in Des Moines that starts, 515 area code. They start at 5:15, and it's usually road bikes, and there's different groups you can sort of ride through the city. So, like this morning, I think they did 30 miles or something like that. So, but if you're up, right, and you've already got your 30 miles in, you just add a little bit more on, and that obviously makes the work pass. But other than that, it's just kind of that mentality where you're just grinding, get the Zwift set up and hammer away. So, uh, but the group does make it a lot better, and socially, you're not a hermit as much anymore. So that's been super helpful. And then as you go to these races, I think that's the biggest thing. Like you're seeing people not just from your town, but right from Omaha, from Council Bluffs, from the other side of the state. You talk about Tipton and Burlington, and knowing guys over there, and even my buddy Chris I met from Chicago last year. You sort of keep in touch on Strava. It's just fun. Like, what's everybody up to? And then I think Strava makes the whole thing happen. Not as any kind of plug, but it's fantastic to see what everybody's doing.
Yeah.
Even you, right? Your Zion stuff, like wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, I just for those to for that reference, I after the Glenwood Gravel this last September 17th or so, I went out with some buddies and we did a Zion traverse across Zion National Park, or did the traverse across Zion National Park, um, which biking kind of prepares you for, but not completely. So I don't know if we'll have time for those stories, but hit me up if you have ideas on how to keep your calves from burning up some of these long hikes. 515 though, that group, did did a bunch of them come out for Albia this last year?
I think they did. I think they did. And you make it tough on us, right? Because you're in the corners of the state, if you will.
Yeah.
But yeah, they definitely showed up for that, and folks still talk about that. So, in fact, you came up a lot even this morning talking about this last weekend's race, the Harvest Rush in Fairfield.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
man, if that was Iowa Gravel Series and everybody knew about it, there'd be 5 times as many people there. So, uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
tell me about how, because Aurelian Windenberg and I
right.
talked a lot about Fairfield, and I'm hoping to maybe Well, they seem like a great group, a great group out there. Tell us a little bit about what Fairfield was like, since that was a most recent race for you.
Yeah, and I'm not going to shoot those guys down. I mean, they can't control the weather, but it was unfortunate, right? So the sort of shtick with that race was that fully 34% of the 105 miles was supposed to be B road.
Mm.
So you're getting after it. Apparently, the roads there are terrific, and so I was looking forward to that. And just for what you could see from the road, it did look like they were dry enough, but it sounded like you get anything north facing or shaded or anything like that, it was just peanut butter. So
Oh wow.
which I appreciate the mile and a half of that you put in your last race. I'm still sore from that. I literally think I said a 10-minute power just trying to hang on Jonathan's wheel. uh, but anyhow,
Jonathan
so that
Wade.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, he knows the mud around here too, which doesn't make it any easier. But
Right,
keep
right.
going.
So no, so I mean it's tough, right? Because they can't control that, so it's sort of you fall back to the just gravel, if you will. I mean, I think the biggest thing is you're sort of hoping for a group to get out there, get after it, compete, whatever, but have some camaraderie. And I think unfortunately the weather scared people away, and having Snaggy Ridge the same weekend, I think split the field even further. Folks coming from the east, it was obviously shorter to go just to the Tipton race and easier. So those things were challenges, but the winery, uh, I don't know if that's the right word. They make cider there. Was a beautiful venue. It would have been great if there were 5 times as many people. It's tough, and they can't control that. But yeah, Aurelian, as you mentioned, super nice guy, and did his best to set it up. And okay, so you do it and you learn, and so there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, weather is definitely the challenge with all of these races. If there's so many things you want to control as a race director, but you're at the whim of whatever Mother Nature is going to send you, and
For sure.
that's part of the fun. I was super excited to see how many people did come out at Glenwood, because I mean we had rolling thunder north of us far in the distance, and everybody's wondering, well, is that going to come our way? Um, so maybe that's a good transition into kind of like what your race experience was on the series this year, since you are, like I mentioned, one of the very few to have gone through all of these races. So maybe I can pick your brain a little bit about what 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 you were experiencing as you went from Silver City to Walk On to Albia, and then Pisgah, and finally I know, spoiler alert, Glenwood didn't turn out exactly the way Jake wanted to. He mentioned the cut in his tire and everything, but we can talk a little bit about the weather and how that worked.
You just race your bike. That's it. I mean, what are you going to do? We're out having fun.
Yeah. So
Of all the races, honestly, like Decorah walk on was so far above for me. It was just gorgeous. I told you this like the next morning. We were driving back with our kids even before breakfast. I got up at sunrise, rode the route again, and like there was no part of doing that. Like, geez, why am I doing this? I regret it. It's just fantastic. I mean, we talked about it. My wife and I, Meredith and I said, look, if kids weren't in school and we were staying in Iowa, I don't know why we would be anywhere other than Decorah. I just thought it was fantastic all the way around.
yeah.
Um,
Well, a
and
huge let me put a shout out to
shoot,
Gary Brown, who lives out there in Decorah, and he's actually going to be helping with the or not Decorah. He lives in Walk On. He's going to be helping out with the Walk On 100 next year, and he's the one that really provided that route, and it is absolutely fantastic. We're going to make some adjustments because I think we're going to change the starting and ending location, but it's a pretty fantastic area. I agree. It's one of my favorites.
yeah, save for that last eighth mile up that hill. That was just graded, but hike a bike. I told
Yeah.
you I don't want to run anymore, Chris.
Wait, that was not running. You were lucky if you could walk up that sucker.
That's true. I don't know if anything I do is actually constituted as running, but yeah, you're right. That's true. It was walking. Yeah, so had a great time there. I had never been down in the Les Hills, so hadn't seen that. I had been over in Omaha. We have family there so many times, and anybody who rides bikes says, "Geez, I bet there's some great roads to go." Because you just see any kind of elevation when you're in Iowa, like that looks fun, and had never ridden there. So that my first, what, Silver City was the first one.
Yeah.
That was my first experience, and it was real. So, yeah, it's like, geez,
What
this is fantastic. Which
what
is why getting up so early for Glenwood, you know, to come over, seeing the storms, like, well, race is on, I'm going. That was why. I mean, it was that good and that much of a challenge. Less of a beach than that previous race. What was the one with all the sand,
Oh,
Chris?
Pisgah, preparation Pisgah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So to characterize, like, do you remember Silver City well enough to kind of characterize what the terrain looked like? Like, how would you just, if someone's like, "Hey, I'm thinking about Silver City, what's it like?" If do you have a description that's and I know that's a lot of races back, but how would you describe it to someone?
Yeah, no, I mean my recollection, honestly, I sort of mentally pick out the highlights and certainly going the B roads down through sort of the road cutouts. I don't know whatever the proper verbiage is there, but I mean we were flying. There's some super steep stuff. I would say at least in my memory for whatever it is, 70% of it was quote normal Iowa gravel, but the 30% was real and stuff I had never experienced. Like I said, the steep dirt up and down, in the different paths. And then, some of that race was seemingly flatter than a pool table. Like you just,
Yeah.
if you didn't want to work, you just sort of sit in the group and coast. It was that smooth and fast. Yeah, that was that. If I had to characterize it, I would say that was a course that was very much on off. But when it was on, it was really on. So yeah, that's how I think of that one. And you're right. As my first sort of bigger group gravel race, that was pretty intense. And I don't know anybody, anything like that. And geez, I hope I don't crash, whatever. So,
Because
uh,
that was your first gravel race, right?
well, outside of the turkey
Oh,
burner last fall, and
yeah.
I did Spotted Horse up here. I think it was first week in November last year. But yeah, those were not at the level in terms of intensity or group size as what you're doing. So yeah, that was a shock for sure. And
Gotcha.
it's physically, just to build on that, it's physically so different than the Ironman, right? So you're trying to say how close to my whatever target power can I stay in the Ironman, whereas the gravel is just surge, surge, surge. That's how it feels to me.
Hmm.
So
Well,
um,
and I think Silver City is very much like that because you have the first part of it that's it's I call it the 5 miles of warm up rollers.
right.
They're pretty good sized rollers to get you out there. And then finally, I have an opportunity to send people kind of north and south along ridge lines and give them a little bit of a respite. I try not to just make it constant rollers. That's Gravel World's territory. They own the world of constant rollers and the gravel seas, and I try to do something just a little bit different.
The gravel seas are real, that's for sure.
They are very real. All right. Well, and then you mentioned walk on out in Decorah and that course. Do you remember a highlight from that? What was it that stood out to you there? And maybe how you describe that one for you, or how the race was for you? Because I think again that was a second place as well. We
Yeah,
were
yeah.
we were noticing a
Derek,
theme at that point.
yeah, no, I mean, like I said, go out and compete, have fun. I mean, just you're so close to the tributaries, you're close to the water and the bluffs and things like that, and the tree cover everywhere. And that was, for us, if you sort of characterize it this way, around Des Moines, yeah, there's a lot of gravel, even 5 miles outside of town, but it tends to be like big rock, heavy gravel. And up there, it's much more almost like crushed limestone, and maybe that's what it was. It's like super fast, and when guys are working and it's quiet, it's like guys, whatever, people on their bikes are working and it's quiet. It's a cool sound, like the gravel peloton going, and so that's the sensation that sticks in my mind about that race is just the group coming down the hills and like, okay, we can't really see around this corner because it's super shaded in here, but it was fast, very fast. Uh, but up there, it seemed like everything was cleaner, nicer, sharper. Like, geez, man, a guy could get used to this.
Hmm. Yeah, that's one of the things I love that area because yes, they have those crushed limestone. I mean, the only B road that even is on that route is that last climb out,
Right.
which is just a total, it's a total kick in the pants, but
Yeah.
it is both logistically and as a race director, I feel inclined to put something on there that you're just never going to forget, and I don't think anybody forgets that last climb there out of the Class B road.
Right.
Um, but yeah, the trout streams, and I mean, I'll tell you one thing that I always look for in a route is curves. And so you mentioned like not being able to see and things like that. As someone who's frankly going a lot faster than I do on routes, I'm like when I do 100K, when I do 60 miles, I'm usually in the 4 hours, maybe low, or high 3 hours realm if I'm really, really racing. And you
Sure.
guys, and other women on the field and everything, like the real racers on this, I have huge respect because you're consistently coming in at that around that 3 hour mark, which is quite a bit faster for me. How does that feel to race when you can't see like a mile down the road? Like in Des Moines, you often can do that. You get out in the crowd in the gravel. Is that does that make it more fun, or is that terrifying to have those curvy routes on a race?
Well, it's, no doubt it's more fun. I mean, I feel like most of what we have here is just, grid. You sort of have to try and find turns. That maybe that was, sort of intrinsically something that was just terrific about that race is just the sort of flowy nature of it. But being in the group, I mean, it definitely took some getting used to, and you sort of trust one another and, make sure nobody's on your outside if you drift wide and all that, and sort of getting a feel for that. But then, like I said, after you do a few of these and you start to recognize people who are there, like, okay, I can learn from that guy. He knows what he's doing, or whatnot. So I think just having that open mind, but also you can't turn your brain off. You sort of stay alert as to what's coming up and so forth. So fortunately, I would say, unlike gravel worlds, I mean, your races did not have a lot of like big hard potholes, hard washboard stuff that can get really, really shady. I mean, with the exception of the sand that we talked about, gravel worlds was a lot more beat up in some spots, and I would say a lot more sketchy. I'm glad I didn't do that as a like, let's go try this as a first thing. So,
Yeah.
which maybe goes without saying, but for the parkour as well.
Well, I mean, Gravel Wars they do a fantastic job with their events, but it is different when you've got that many people, and it's just a different event, and you take it as it is, and you race what you get, right? And
Well, yeah, and if you want to find 150 miles, it's not all going to be gold.
right, yeah, yeah. We're at most handling two routes there, and usually they overlap. Well,
Yep.
let's talk about Albia because that was a big. I think as a race director, I'm not supposed to be rooting for people, but there is a very real video at the end of Albia, I think, where I'm like, I'm literally saying, "Come on, Jake,
Yeah.
you got this." I was kind of rooting for you after seeing you on the podium a couple times. What do you remember from Albia, the Holy Cow race?
Yeah, well, first of all, that it's super well named. There were more livestock there, goats and sheep and cows, as we talked about, than anything else. So that was a lot of fun from that standpoint. Very different. That was, I would say, course wise, more what I'm used to. Clearly from a Central Iowa, from a terrain standpoint. So that part, but also nice to be able to have some local guys. You mentioned 515 showing up. And geez, to show up at a race and know 10 people there was something that I hadn't done in a long, long time. So that was a lot of fun. Yeah, and as far as getting off the schneid or whatever, I don't know, right? I mean, you're gonna go out and race the race and go as hard as you can, and that's sort of it. If you get last, you get last. But did you suffer? Yes. Okay, check. That's what you're looking for. At least what I'm looking for. So and as a analytics person, I'm always saying, did I go 2% better? Is my heart rate lower for the same effort? That kind of thing. So, kind of a data junkie from that standpoint. So yeah, I mean those are the parts I remember, but mostly the animals.
Mostly,
We talked about this at the end. There was I don't know what age it was. This cow or bull, this little guy, relatively, uh, was on the road right in front of us, staring at us, and just jumped down into the ditch. And I bet all my bikes that this ditch was as tall as I was, and I wasn't the only one who saw it. And he just full head first, just decided to jump into the ditch. So that was pretty funny. But it could have gotten shady pretty quickly, also.
Yeah, I mean, I that route is I will say that that is the route that I have seen more animal life even on my own. I've encountered a badger. I've encountered what I think I'm sure they were pheasant, but they were the size of turkeys. They were just huge pheasant, and deer and cows. That's why it's named. You actually go through a livestock yard at one
Yep.
point on it,
Yep.
which usually is where I think all the cows should be, and they're all firmly gated away, and it's a after a really pretty section of Class B road and everything. But yeah, that area down in Albia is so teeming with life that it makes it a little bit fun. I did not intend for a cow to actually be on the route.
Yeah, I
Um,
don't even know how it happened. There were actually two, and the one just decided he was going to dive in. So
oh man, these are the exciting things that you get, just as like an extra plus when you get into the gravel world, right? Yeah, the encounters that you would probably never see on a Chicago marathon or even a Des
right.
Moines marathon sort of thing because you're so surrounded by asphalt and civilization and everything. And so getting out to a different place is I guess it's all part of the fun. Is that okay?
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, I don't know the temperament because I don't know what the gender of the animal was, but it did not look happy that we were there. So I'm just gonna say it was a cow. So
All right.
yeah, but that was a good memory from that race for sure.
Okay, so let's go on to preparation Pisgah, which yeah, you mentioned the sand at preparation Pisgah. What else do you remember about that race? Like, how would you uh, describe that to a friend if they're saying, "Hey, I'm thinking of signing up for this"?
Yeah, I mean that one was. I mean, geez, and I don't have the route in front of me. Was it 45 or 50 miles in? Like when you pull up the route file the first time, like oh that's where it's going to happen. That's going to hurt a lot, right? And I think we had just come over the highway, and you're looking at the hills, looking at the incline that you're going to have to get through because the town is on the other side.
Yeah, it's the
Uh,
climb. Like you can see it on the
yeah,
elevation map. It's like super flat, and then there's a climb,
yep,
right? Yeah,
yep.
so
It,
138th and Fulton is what it's called.
okay, and am I about right on the 45 or 50 miles in? Because that's
Yeah,
that's what.
about there. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, and so that just all day that was like all right, I'm gonna have to do that first, make it there, and then like that's where it's gonna be on, whatever. And it was, and that hurt a lot. But it's like, geez, we're not gonna walk, we're just not gonna walk. That was my only goal. And so yeah, I remember that, and then honestly after that everything felt super easy. So I mean there you go.
Even
And
the
then
sand, even the sand, like
well, remember, most of the sand was before, right? So before you come across the highway, I think you're heading east there, right? Straight toward the hills.
hmm
That's where the deepest, toughest sand was. And by that, I mean, it was almost like snowplow in a few spots. Like, geez, I don't know if I'm going to stay up through this. But, and then you get through the incline. After that, I don't think there was much sand at all, at least in my mind. Maybe I had sort of mentally checked the box and I was done. But, after that, it didn't seem that bad. My thing there was I was, honestly, my memory is even more poor because that was the night after the Brooks and Dunn concert, and I think I
oh,
told you it was like 3 hours of sleep. Like, what are we doing? Like, stay in bed, So
well, you pulled out a fantastic lead. That was and win. Seth Tellinghusen, who I had on the podcast after that one, he describes his experience and he was a young up and comer, but I was still also excited to see you be on the top of the podium there for that race. That was a big deal because that is a tough race. It's a tough course. I'd like to think, and you can push back on this if I'm wrong, but I'd like to think that Pisgah is as difficult as it is very rewarding and it's very unique for the Iowa, even Nebraska in this area because you climb up a hill and then you flatten and you climb up another hill and then you go and you flatten and you climb up another hill. Like that's not something that happens a lot in Iowa where you have consecutive climbs after each other. And not all of
right,
them are huge and crazy. 138th in Fulton is like I think that's the only climb that I consistently my Garmin says, congratulations, you have a new heart rate, like max heart
Yes.
rate.
Yeah.
And, and I'm like, I'm too old to be getting new max heart rates. I don't know if that's a good thing. But in terms of the area, the Les Hills, Preparation Canyon, the Les Hills State Forest is where it's at.
Yep.
Um, I find it some of like the most beautiful terrain that we have. So this year with Pisgah, the one thing that did detract from all of that beauty was that it was drier than I've ever seen it, and that's where the sand came from. But so here's the question: is Pisgah worth the pain?
Oh, of course. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course. I mean, again, so there's a reason we're not all just doing group rides on a road bike, right? Which there's nothing wrong with that. That has its spot, but we're coming out to suffer. Like everybody knows that that's what's going to happen. No matter what spot you're in, you're going to work your butt off. So you might as well enjoy it, right? And do something really, I'll say, different or distinct. And that's the gist of it, right? So yeah, absolutely. I think it's worth it. Um, I think on the other hand, there's some benefit to being the new guy and not knowing better, because then you sort of get out there like, oh, that's a big hill. No, no, you've underestimated what that is going to be like. But like I said, that just makes me more excited to come out and do it again next year. Like, okay, so we know what it's about. Yeah, so I think the harder you can make it, the better, with the exception of muddy B roads. I've had my fill of muddy B roads.
Well, that's a perfect transition. Let's talk about Muddy B Roads and the first race that I have ever put on. So I've put on 11 races so far, and this last year's Glenwood was the first one where I'm like, we are definitely going to have rain on race day. And I don't know how I got that lucky that this was the first one where that happened. But tell me a little bit about, because we went from a very beautiful, well prepared route. The secondary roads team in Mills County even went and graded the roads beautifully for me. Like they went out of their way and they're like, please give us the route. We'll go and make it look gorgeous. And they did their job perfectly. And then we got the rain, and we weren't sure. I'd gone and scouted and marked the route as I usually do for everything, and I could get through it with my Subaru Outback, which is usually a fairly good test of whether it's something that anybody can get through.
Okay.
It's worked so far for me. But then by the morning, it was clear that the amount of rain that was going to be coming down was going to be a problem. So we switched to what I was calling. I had three routes prepared for both distances: the dry route, wet route, and a very wet route. And we shifted to the very wet route, and I did keep some interesting sections on there, specifically a lot of grass and at least one two, I guess, two B roads. One again that had quite a bit of grass on it. It was going through a cornfield, and then a longer cornfield section that kind of did this L. It had this left turn on it.
Yeah.
And I kept them on there because I knew there was grass. I knew there was somewhere to walk, and it wasn't just dirt. And I'm like, well, I'm going to try and keep those on. And so here's my question, Jake. Did I make the right choice?
Yes. Yeah. No question. No question. It was really, really hard. It was, I don't want to do this anymore. But right, you're looking around and nobody's complaining, nobody's quitting, and that's the point, right? You can sort of say I'm ready to go suffer and work, but then you can prove it. Man, that was.
Tell me about the first grass section because you climb up through what we call the Glenwood Resource Center, the GRC, and then I had to go through some DNR space that was all grass. Was that difficult?
No, because it's so early on. You're in a group. You're not feeling any pain, right? Your coffee's still working, so you're good. You're still warm, right? You weren't that wet. So no, that was a total. Like I wouldn't have even remembered it, honestly, other than it being the very beginning of the race. And you'll have to help me with the name. The Lincoln Health guy went super hard.
Oh,
so
Nebraska Medicine.
Yeah, there you go.
Brian Johnson.
There you go.
Yeah, red kit.
Yes.
White and red.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, Brian's
And he and I actually rode a little while together at Worlds, so that was fun. But yeah, so he went super hard, so I was not paying attention to terrain. The second one, the L-shaped one, was extremely hard.
that
So
was that was the third one. There were the second one. What you climb up a hill, and actually I think it says dead end. You climb up a hill, and then you make a right, and it's just a straight shot through a cornfield, and you kind of make another right and back. And that sounds like that one wasn't even memorable.
yeah, no, honestly, I maybe I could look up my file and do a Google Earth and get to it, but all I have as my memory, other than the flat, right, which whatever, bike race, was that L shape because I've got the Garmin, and you're sort of like, it tells you this far until the turn. Like, okay, so you're convincing yourself, I just have to suffer for 6/10 of a mile, and then I'm good. And then you turn left, you're like, no, 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 no. And that was exactly what I did. Said no, 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 no. But at that point, right, you're in the middle of the ocean, so
Yeah.
swim in a direction.
So this
So
so it sounds like it was rideable. It doesn't sound like anybody had to like nobody in the at least with the fast bike. I heard a few people struggled, maybe had to walk a little bit of it, but nobody ended up walking the dirt sections that we left on there.
no, but I do think, I don't know if your Garmin does this, but when you hit either end of the cassette, mine beeps at me.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
so I went through that in granny gear, period. Like, yeah, just like, okay, it's walk or do this. So,
Oh geez.
uh, yeah, it was really hard. So yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, you're sorry, I'm not sorry, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm not asking for an apology, but when it was done and it was paved, I was like, oh, glory. Yeah, I mean, it was uphill, but you didn't even feel that.
So what happened with the tire? Where do you estimate that tire got cut?
Well, oh, geez, what was it? 47, 48 miles in, and three of us working together, and it was just I had just put new sealant in. We won't go down this rabbit hole, but evidently those challenge tires are indeed a challenge.
Mm,
So yeah, like I said, I won't put anybody on the record for it, but a lot of folks have had uh, difficulties with it. I mean, they feel honestly, I think I could tell a difference blindfold. They feel really good when you're riding, but they're super fragile and they're not vulcanized. So if you get a flat, they don't hold any shape.
mm.
So you're sort of trying to pinch it and plug it, and your hands are wet and cold. And so I did, and then CO2, and it didn't hold. The plug just wasn't all the way in, obviously, and just that was it. And it wasn't that big of a cut, and that was I think race number 2 on those tires. And so now they're hanging in my garage. I just
Oh.
like I went back to the Pathfinders. That's they've been good to me. So yeah, that was it. Not even a big cut. So, and it sort of sprays everywhere, so you did it right.
Yeah.
Uh,
Did you
and
get to the second aid station in Thurman?
I don't think so. Like I said, I was 47, 48 ish miles in, and there was one family waiting for I think their son to come through. So I sort of talked with them for a while, but that was kind of it. And it was like, okay, let's walk until we find somebody.
So, well, I mean, I put a phone number on the bibs that say, "Hey, call us if you need support."
Yep.
How did you end up getting back to the start line? Because I and my support team is fantastic. Sometimes a lot of things just happen because they just make the right thing happen. Everything. But how did you end up getting back to the start
Well,
line?
help me remember your buddy's name. He's EMT. He makes the
Oh, Gerald.
us. Nope.
Oh,
He and his family make the cow stunning tools.
I'm sorry. Jones, Art Jones. That's right.
Yes,
So
yes,
you did get past the second aid station, and you were apparently coming back towards that race. Ended up with 3 aid stations, which is unique.
yeah,
But
buddy. I don't know. I mean, I was just head down.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so you got back to yeah, you got back to that far. And Art Jones, who makes those cow stunning devices and everything.
Yeah,
You made it that far.
yeah, and that whole thing. He just kind of look at me while he just happens to be getting his mail. Like, what's up, man? So he didn't say that, but that was clearly his look. He's like, "Did you get a flat tire?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I tried to fix it." He's like, "Do you need a ride?" Well, you don't have to do that. And then he offered, right? And so just the real quick amusing, I think, story of that is so he goes to start his truck, throw my bike in the back, right? His truck's battery is dead.
Oh,
So he and I have to figure out how to get my muddy self and bike into his wife's very, very clean CRV.
Oh,
with a light gray interior. And I don't smell like roses at this point, and so that he wouldn't let me buy him breakfast. I eventually just had to take money and put it in the back of his CRV and walk away because he wouldn't take it.
oh, you're
But
you're
yeah,
you're you're a very kind man. Just just so you don't feel alone, scouting that route last year, I had a flat. They were on, I think it was on Gravel Kings, and Art gave me a ride back to the park area where the grass section was at the beginning where my car was. So
sure.
Art has now become rather experienced at giving gravel cyclists.
I've seen this movie before. Yeah, hell
He's
of a
like, I know
nice
what to do
guy.
here.
Yeah, that's right. Super, super nice guy. That was terrific. The way that worked out, and yeah, I mean, he was a lifesaver. I mean, it was just going to be walk until you get back to some aid station or find somebody. So I honestly, you say, why didn't you just call the number? Like, I just wasn't thinking. Like, one, it's like I'm exhausted. I'm trying to hang with these guys. Two, I'm frustrated, right? Because it's like not just win whatever, but like you just don't want this to happen, and you're cold and wet. Like so, it was
Yeah.
sort of the trio. And like I said, I was going to walk back to that family and say, will you take me back? And I'm sure they would have. Anyhow, so yeah, that was it. Otherwise, I mean, just I enjoyed that race. I think in a dry scenario, and obviously I don't know the other courses, but I think that'd be terrific. Art had told me that the road on which I got the flat, the intersection, he said they do like some construction with steel, and they
Mm.
carry it. I think it was north south through there, and so he said basically that he wasn't surprised.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, but I didn't see anything. It just you hear it and there it is. So
Yeah, yeah. No, I've gotten flats on all sorts of different areas all around Iowa, and it doesn't. I can't yet point to necessarily my tires or certain terrains or things like that. It used to be growing up. It was always the goat head thorn was the
yep,
bane of my existence, and we fortunately don't see a lot of those in Iowa, which is fantastic. But there seems to be plenty of other things that can certainly wreck a tire if you're not
yeah.
careful
The
or if you're
spotted
just
horse
unlucky.
folks. That's right. The spotted horse folks, relentless. They have a 100-mile race in Central Iowa, and I did get one of those goat's heads, and I never dealt with that before on a bike tire. So that was an experience. But like I said, now I'm just running basically twice as much ceiling as they tell me to run. Like I don't care. I don't want flats.
Yeah.
So,
Well, we probably should wrap this up. This has been fantastic, but I want to ask you a few things real quick. Specifically, what are your goals for 2023 after kind of wrapping this season? And maybe you still need to recover from all of it, and maybe you're not even done. I don't know if you've got a few other races that are late fall things, but what's the future hold for Jake Johnson as you think about this year and next?
yeah, well, so Osage Passage, so the Tulsa Tough people are putting that on. I think it's the second year down in Oklahoma. It's this weekend. So I'm signed up. I've got my Airbnb. So I think I'm going to go down. I'm sort of 90-10 on that. It's just when you have a 7 hour drive both ways, you sort of commit. But on the other hand, it's the end of the year, and how many more weekends can we race?
Yeah.
And the answer is not very many. Uh, so there's that. And then BWR Kansas, I'm going to do what's at middle October, and those are sort of the big ones. So they're kind of out there. I'm not a single track fan in any way, but I do understand there's some of that in Lawrence, but hopefully not too much. And then next year, just as you know, I did not have my best experience at Gravel Worlds, and that's on me. I crashed and I had 4 gears for 70 miles, and then 1 gear for I don't know how many, but too many. And then everything started working again. So I don't know what it was, but not fun is what a lot of it was. But yeah, that's on my list. Sort of the at least for me personally, the revenge tour. Yeah, that race was it was crazy to be right next to Pete Stetton. I mean, it just I told my wife it's like if a kid's playing basketball and you're next to LeBron, like in my mind. He's just I think a fantastic person from everything I've seen, and to be next to him was just like, man, this is amazing. He's just
Yeah.
right there. So that was super cool. So Worlds is like A plus top of the list right now. But like I said, I told you I've gone from running to Ironman to CrossFit to this. So we didn't touch on CrossFit. That's a different conversation.
That's true.
Uh,
We might have to do a follow up here soon and get into that a little bit. Especially we
yeah,
didn't get into the training thing, which I'm very curious for you as well. So
sure,
well
sure.
let's go ahead and wrap this one up. Thank you so much, Jake. I look forward to hopefully seeing you on, many more races, and I hope to be out at Gravel Worlds. I'm definitely going to be putting on the series here next year. We might even add a few races that might be fun. So hopefully see you there. But thank you again for your time, and we will catch up soon.
Yeah, buddy. I mean, and I would just close by saying we appreciate you. The community appreciates you. I mean, we go to races and you're being talked about. And like I said, even this last weekend, how do we get this a part of the Iowa Gravel Series? I mean, I think you're just your peer class and what you do and your contribution, time, effort, energy. The community appreciates, and Iowa cycling is better because you're in it, Chris. So we really appreciate you and thank you.
All right. Well, on that embarrassing note, but thank you. I appreciate it. We will close up and catch you later. Thanks so much.
All right. Goodbye. Bye.